Nice and close. Can you hear me okay? Terry Brands, can you hear me? All right. If Terry can hear me, I'm in good shape. First of all, I want to thank Dennis for having a moment of silence for Sherwin Thorson. Don Huff and I went to his funeral Saturday in Fort Dodge. It's one of the biggest turnouts I've ever seen. Not only was Sherwin a member of this Hall of Fame and about a dozen other Hall of Fames and played 8 years in the Canadian Football League and was a member of the Winnipeg Blue Bomber Hall of Fame, but he was my first hero when I was a sophomore at East Waterloo High School, and I picked up the paper, the Waterloo Courier, and saw a picture of him winning the NCAA title his senior year with a devastating pin. He was my hero. And some of you know I'm a writer. I've written 27 books. I created Win Magazine. I created the Dan Gable Wrestling Museum. So history has been very important to me. And here's a quote I want you to think about the rest of tonight and as the years go by. In 1922, Thomas Carlyle wrote a book called On Heroes and Hero Worship. And this is the quote I want you to think about. Whoever excels in what we prize appears a hero in our eyes. That's why you're here tonight. That's why what Cresco does is so incredible. Because they create heroes and we remember heroes. And I do not know a better example of that than Jim Duschen. Jim Duschen and I have been friends since we were 12 years old. We were in a Y swimming class together, so it's a miracle neither one of us drowned. We became such good friends that he was in my wedding 48 years ago. I was in his wedding 40 years ago. We're both ardent weightlifters. We've lifted weights. We've hung out together for 50 years. A lot of people will look at Jim's physique through the years and say, he had such a head start on everybody in wrestling. Why wouldn't he be great? But what they didn't see were two things that he had. An incredibly big heart and an iron will. He went to Iowa State as a walk-on. Nobody recruited him. He wound up as a two-time Big 8 champion, Midlands champion, Iowa State All-American, two-time Greco-Roman national champion, four-time freestyle All-American, made the 1973 world team that went to Iran and missed the Olympic team by 1 point. Les Anderson told me many times, I've had a lot of favorite wrestlers at Iowa State, but if you ask me who is my all-time favorite wrestler, I would have to say it's Jim Duschen. Because he came in with nothing but a tremendous physique and a heart as big as the whole Iowa State wrestling room. Jim Duschen willed himself into being a great wrestler. After his wrestling days were over, he went to Nevada, took over a program that was terrible, like Rick was talking about at Waverly. He built the finest wrestling program, high school wrestling program, in probably all of Nevada. They won 2 state titles. They were in the top 5 many times. He had over 22 state champions. He was always somewhere helping promote the sport. I told you I've written a lot of books, and people say, how'd you get so involved in wrestling history? Jim, I've never told you this. It was mostly through him. We sat many nights telling stories about great wrestlers like Frank Freeman and Bill Dotson and Sherwin Thorson. I learned a lot of my wrestling knowledge from Jim Duschen. 2 people got a hold of me and said, will you please say this about Jim Duschen tonight? And I'll wrap up by doing this. Brad Reingans wrestled at North Dakota State University. He was NCAA champion Division II at 190 pounds. Then he won 8 Greco-Roman national titles, made 2 Olympic teams, got 3rd in the world in Greco-Roman, won the Pan American Games, became a pro wrestler for Vern Gagne. He wrestled for 14 years and trains people like Brock Lesnar. Brad called me up and said, if it wasn't for Jim Duschen, I never would have wrestled after college. Jim Duschen was a graduate assistant there and threw me from one end of that room to the other, and I didn't think I was any good. And then one day Jim come up to me and said, you know, Brad, you need to go into Greco. You could be great. So Brad said to me, will you tell that group tonight that Jim Duschen played a bigger role in my life than anybody else when it comes to wrestling. The last one is from Gordon Hassman from New Hampton, 3-time All-American, NCAA champion, and Gordon sent me this. Jim Duschen may be the best example of post-college success of any wrestler who did not win a state title. For he accomplished something more difficult, more loftier by winning a spot on the USA World Wrestling Team that went to Tehran. That exemplifies one of life's most valuable lessons. With hard work, dedication, and persistence, through tough times and faith in himself and his coaches, Jim Duschen became a highest achiever, a champion, and one of my best friends. Congratulations, Jim Duschen. Jim, welcome to the Iowa Wrestling Hall of Fame.
I want to thank Mike for his kind words. After what Mike said, I don't have much to add. Mike's been a long-time friend that has supported me in a number of ways through the years. We came out of East High School in Waterloo. Mike was 1 year ahead of me. And we remained long-time friends from that time up through the present. I want to thank the committee for their selecting me, and also want to congratulate the other three that are inducted to the 2016 Iowa Wrestling Hall of Fame for their outstanding contributions and to the sport. It's very appropriate that this Hall of Fame is located in Cresco, which has a rich tradition, a lot of history that goes way back. And I remember the last time I was here, it was 1969 after we won the NCAA championship. They had us come up here, had a banquet, a dinner, and we was right in this same place. It's the last time I was in Cresco. A lot of people I have to give credit to for helping me in numerous ways. And too numerous to mention, all of them that have played a big role in my life. My wife Doris, I want to thank for her support through the years. My son wasn't able to make it. My sister Lynn, Axel, her husband Dave, are here. Friend Tom Blecker and Tim Fuller. Also, longtime friend, goes way back to my days at Iowa State, George Dimitri. George was an outstanding football player at Iowa State during that time. He was the first team all-conference, Big 8, defensive lineman. And George knew a lot of us that wrestled during that time. I always remember him being at most of the meets that were held there in the old armory. Also, my uncle Jack Smith is here, and his wife Barbara. Thank them also for being here. I've been fortunate to be surrounded by Hall of Famers since the beginning, as long as I can remember. Coming out of Waterloo, which was a mecca of wrestling during those years, I was surrounded by outstanding coaches and teammates, and also I think the support we had, the publicity that we got from the Waterloo Courier had a lot to do with it. Russ Smith, and then after Russ, Kevin Evans did a lot for the sport as far as promoting it. So it was a great environment to grow up in. And I remember in the Courier, for the East-West meet each year, on the front page of the sports, they'd have pictures of the starting lineups. And I'm thinking, well, you know, in junior high, I'm thinking, who wouldn't want to wrestle with the type of publicity, promotion, and importance that was placed on wrestling? My initial introduction to the sport was watching my uncle, Jack, win the state championship. That guy's about third grade, and I thought, well, that's pretty neat. You know, I think I'd like to do that. So started wrestling 7th grade there at Logan Junior High School. I was an 85-pounder. And each year I gradually got a little bigger, just progressing through the weights. By the time I was a sophomore entering East High, I was at 112. And then my junior year, 145. My senior year, 165. I did make it to state, losing defending champion in a close match. At that time, that was the first round, there weren't any wrestle bets. Thought there had to be more to it than this. I thought, no, I'm not done. I was fortunate to have Dave Natvig, Hall of Fame coach. And during those years, it was difficult to make the team. And I didn't even actually break in a starting lineup full-time till my senior year. And I remember during those years at both East and West, there were certain individuals that never made the team until their senior year, then were state champions. I didn't have the most stellar career in high school, but kind of felt, well, you know, I can go on and continue. First year out of high school, I stayed out of high school 2 years, just working, kind of bumming around. Went out to California with my friend Mike Chapman. He was stationed in the Navy. I was wrestling on the base there at Mare Island. Ron Panetta was the coach. And he had a lot to do with helping me out while I was out there. During that time, I started maturing, getting a little bigger, and I went back the second year I was out. I worked for the Illinois Central Railroad. I guess that's where I was recruited out of the railroad guys. A longtime friend, Bob Buzzard. Out in Oregon, it's bizarre. So he talked to Coach Nichols and convinced him to, you know, get me down there. So I went down there on a walk-on, and it was just a great environment to prosper in. Had great workout partners and coaches, Harold Nichols and Les Anderson, who I felt was the best assistant coach in the country. Les ended up being a longtime friend that I kept in close touch with through the years. Tom Peckham, Saturday night, was one of my workout partners. It was actually a lesson in self-defense, just surviving each day. I thought, you know, when I got into meets, it was a relief just to get out of the room and compete. So after my freshman year, I redshirted, then wrestled 3 years varsity. 177, 191 in heavyweight through those 3 years. And as far as my, you know, accomplishments, I did win the Midlands my sophomore year. Mike had mentioned the Big 8, All-American. Also had the honor at that time to wrestle with a legend, Dan Gable, which was an experience in itself. Just a great team to be a part of. After I finished my eligibility, I still wanted to wrestle. So I went into Chicago, wrestled for Terry McCann at the Mayor Daley Youth Foundation. Wrestling both freestyle and Greco-Roman. Had great workout partners there. Kind of fell by the wayside after that. I did win the National Grecos that first year in there. Came back in '72. Tried out for the Olympics in Greco. Fell a little bit short. didn't make it. And so I headed up to Fargo, North Dakota, as a grad assistant under the head coach, Bucky Mont. I'd never been up there. I always told everybody I was going to go someplace where it was warmer when I got out of there. I ended up in Fargo. It was there that I had the opportunity to coach Brad Reindens. And I saw the potential he had. As Mike was saying, even though I was throwing him around the room, I did see what he had. And I was convinced that as long as he stayed with it, I told him, I think when I left, when he finally figured it out, I didn't even want to be in the same room with him anyway. I kept wrestling through that time that I was up there. And did pretty well both freestyle and Greco. Made the world team. Went out to, ended up out at Colorado State for a year as a grad assistant. After that, assistant wrestling. And then I came back to Iowa. Ended up in Grinnell, the high school, for 2 years. It was my first full-time teaching job, and as head wrestling coach. Had a lot of, I found out it was a lot different coaching than it was wrestling. I thought, you know, yeah, I can wrestle, I know I can coach. And was in for a surprise as far as all the different things you have to deal with, not just in the room, but outside the room as well. I always felt that you have to, first of all, you have to be a motivator. Getting kids out, convincing them to stay out. And at the same time, I realized that it wasn't important to most of the wrestlers as it was to me. And somehow you have to keep them interested in staying with them and convince them that it's the best thing they can be doing. Have a lot of good memories, experiences, a lot of the traveling that I was able to do, working summer camps, instructing camps through the years. But as I coached, I ended up going out to UNLV, and after I was at Grinnell 2 years. I assisted there at UNLV as a volunteer assistant. That was an experience going out there. Then the following year I ended up out at Basic High School in Henderson. Ended up staying 29 years. The principal at the time had a background in wrestling. Very few times I've found administrators that had a background in wrestling. So he hired me. I can remember when he interviewed me, he asked me how long I planned on staying. And I said, well, as long as everything works out, I plan on staying a while. And after my first year there, I got a note in my mailbox that he was leaving. And I was thinking I should have asked him how long he planned on staying. But we did end up winning the state that first year. We weren't expected to by any means. Took some seniors that hadn't really been to state, got them there, got some breaks, and I think we ended up winning the state by 1.5 points. But I realized it was more than just, a lot more than just in the room. But, and also as time went on, it went far beyond the wins and losses. And to this day, former wrestlers come back or call just to visit, talk. And at the same time, I look back at all the years I spent in the sport. I wouldn't recommend any young wrestler, if you plan to go on, to follow the route that I took. But it's been fun. I think the challenge of it in the sport, same things that I think compel a lot of individuals to want to wrestle, same things that drive others away. I was having just as much fun my last year as head coach out there as the first. I think we ended up last year 20-2 in duels. Had about 6 kids in the state, a few kids placing. I felt that achieving success through disappointment is one key factor that's important. Setting goals, then going about achieving them, being able to handle losing, but the carryover value in the sport is immense. But at the same time, I always felt your desire to win has to exceed your fear of losing. And you have to have a passion. Put the time and effort that's necessary into the sport as a wrestler or a coach. It's important. You have to be extremely dedicated, make a commitment. It's not for, as Dan Gable was often quoted, it's not for everyone, but it should be. And I found there was a little different mentality in the sport out in Nevada. And just not the same amount of interest. Not a lot of tradition, but we have had a number of individuals from Nevada go on and do well. I had a number of them too as well. But they've also had several top flight tournaments that have been held there in Las Vegas. Cliff Keen Invitational is held there. It's one of the top collegiate tournaments every year. The Desert Duels, Division III NAIA dual meet, which Wartburg hosts. Joe and Julie Breitbach play a large part in organizing and running that. Of course, Jim Miller was coach there. Phenomenal what he did there. All the Division III NCAA championship teams he had. It was held in the Flamingo Hilton in a ballroom, chandeliers. It kind of reminded me of the New York Athletic Club, the atmosphere there. But just in summation, the people I've met in the sport are the best people I've ever met. It's like a fraternity. Several of them have been lifetime friends. And again, I want to thank the committee for selecting me, and for that matter, everyone that's here tonight for their support. Thank you.